In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a Brazilian EDM song. I have my song pulled up, Cachaça. This is a song I already finished up, already released. And what I'm going to do in this video is basically break the song down, deconstruct it, so you can make your own Brazilian EDM song. I'm going to play you a little bit of it, show you kind of the main peak, or one of the main peaks of the song, and then we're going to break down how to make your own. So here's a little snippet of it. Oh. Right? You got the idea. So, first thing when it came to this song, right, is I got a sample. Ironically, this is actually from AI, technically Suno AI music generator. It was a sample from like a pirate sea shanty. So this is how it sounds on its own. Right? Now you can use any sample, but I find when it comes to Brazilian music specifically, if we're looking like ballet funk, I find vocal percussive elements are a huge driving point. So a big thing I suggest, try to find some samples. Like if I go to, let me see if I can do this. I know I have like the screen half and half, but if I go to like, say, I have this one called, it's like Shadow Samples Ballet Bass. I want to stress I have no affiliation with the sample pack, but it's a great sample pack. So I have like samples like this.
Fala, galera. Fala.
So I find vocal samples are a big thing that really helps drive a Brazilian song. So in the beginning, like I said, I have this one. Again, I got this from AI. Then pretty simple in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. There's nothing too crazy in the beginning when it comes to the build. Sometimes I do add certain melodies and riffs and rhythms when it comes to the Brazilian music I make. But in this case, kind of just have this. Right? Just kind of like a kick, some build elements. But then it gets to the drop, which is the main point of this video that I'm really going to focus on. So first thing is I like the vocal sample as you can see, just quick one-shots at every section of the drop, every fourth section basically. What this does, it kind of brings your mind back to it. So it's this, right? And you use that on every fourth section to kind of bring you back to it. Next, when it comes to a lot of Brazilian music and world music, let's talk about the percussive elements. A song like this, compared to, like, say, a dubstep song, is very sample-driven. Very, very sample-driven. Like, I don't think I use serum at all in this song. I use serum in almost every song. Not in this case, right? So the first thing I have is this. Right, this is a sample pack I found in Splice. And this is where, like, it does involve, I think, a lot of crate digging, because I find when it comes to a lot of Brazilian music, and again, I put kind of world music in this category, too, where a lot of the percussive elements, I want to have a very, maybe, tribal feel for a song like this. So this is the sample I have, right? Right? So I have, like, a vocal shout. I have different, like, you know, other percussive elements. But I have this good kind of kick pattern here. Then I found this bass line. Sometimes I'm making serum. Sometimes I'm just digging on Splice and I find a good one. And I have this. Almost a bit moombahton or reggaeton a little bit. Right? And then what I did is I made sure to sidechain it. The reason why is when you have a kick and a bass playing at the same time, they conflict, and that low one is not going to hit the same. They almost cancel each other out, right? Think of it almost like math equations. You know, they almost cancel each other out in a sense, like 1 plus -1. So what I did is I made sure to sidechain it that on every time the kick plays, there's a slight pause, so you can hear this. Right? That clicking is the time. So now when I combine these, I have this. Right? A lot cleaner. So this alone does have like a good Brazilian element to it. After that then, I've already shown you the vocal kind of shot. Then this is pretty much standard. What I like to do on some of my drops, especially let's say on like a Brazilian song, is slowly add elements. Sometimes I kind of jump right into it and have a lot of stuff going on. And this one, I almost want each section of the drop to build on itself, right? Because this drop kind of comes out of nowhere. Like in the beginning of this song, I have this. Right, then I have this. On the build. This song could have gone in a million different ways. I could have made this like a dubstep song. Originally, I actually was going to make this a bass song, given that like pirate sea shanty vocal sample. But then something about the drop, to me, kind of throws you off guard. And I mean that in a good way, right? Because when I go here, you're like, all right. you're expecting maybe one thing, or maybe something different, and then you have this. Right? And because that throws you off guard, I wanted the listener to take some time to get used to this switch up, if that makes sense. So I have this, right? I've already shown you these elements. Call back to before. Now we get into the second part of the job. So the first thing I did is added in more high-end elements. I find, and this is a bit of like a psychological thing, when you add in elements, like say if you look at like a piano, so low notes versus high notes. When you have higher notes, a lot of times they add in more energy. So when I have this now, right, there's a certain energy that gets increased, or perceived energy, if I'd word it like that, when it comes to a song. So with this, now you notice you have this, right? Big thing, especially when it comes to a lot of Brazilian music, having some like good kind of hi-hat grooves. I mean, this is true for a lot of EDM. And then to make it more Brazilian, if I'd word it like that, one of my signature sounds, if I'd use that term, is the Burnambao from Capoeira. I used to do Capoeira. One of my first Brazilian hits, if I'd word it like that, where I actually started to get known in Brazil. Actually, some of my music is known pretty well in Brazil. Is a song I made literally called Capoeira, where I use the Burnambao with EDM. And I remember being like, oh, like I hear a lot of Capoeira music. I love the sound of the Burnambao, but I feel like no one's ever used it in an EDM song. So that was my first big like Brazilian hit back in the day. So I use the Burnambao in a lot of my songs, even if it's not like a Brazilian song. So I have this sample, and when it comes to Burnambaos, I don't think I've ever seen a Burnambao VST. Maybe there is one. I've done some digging, haven't found any. Let me know if you know of any. So I like to use this because it is very, if I'd use the word, like authentically Brazilian. So it sounds like this. And what I did, and I think this is an important thing, is I always tried to like figure out, okay, what's the main pitch of this one sample? So as you can see, I pitch it down 2 semitones, or basically 1 full step. I then added some stuff to it. So first off, I have a tuner here. That just allows me to quickly look at what notes is it actually playing. I also have accurate fast, which with this allows me to also sometimes do this. So I'm like, all right, so the first note looks like an F sharp. I'm like, okay. And then here is a G. So I can look down here to, and that's another cool trick to figure out what is the exact note. Because when it comes to the Burnambao, it's not like a normal like dum on a piano. There's a lot of elements, I think, like that, or harmonics or whatever, when it comes to the sound of the Burnambao. Then, of course, I have a few other things here, like a bit of a sidechain compressor. I also want to make it wider. So this is an interesting thing when it comes to Burnambao. When I have a sample, and this is true for a lot of samples, especially if you're doing a sample-based track like a Brazilian song, is I'm going to do this, actually. Did I put them down here? No, I didn't. Okay. So if I do this, it sounds like, all right. But if I do this, and what I'm doing is initially, I'm going to mute this. The sample itself, actually I'm going to do this. I'm going to duplicate this just so I can show you better. But if I go here, right, and bring it down to normal, you can see it's pretty much in mono, no stereo. So what I did then is I used the Ozone Imager. This is a free plugin, by the way. I've already reviewed it on this channel. And what I did is I boosted the width. I want it to be super wide because this one's super narrow. And I also stereoized it. So I basically added some stereo to it. So now it sounds like this, right? Also, this. And then what I did with this is the Voxel MSED. Fun fact, this is the first free plugin I ever reviewed on this channel. This is the plugin that actually was the main start or catalyst to start this channel. If it wasn't for Voxel MSED, I don't even know if this channel would be in existence, because I remember my friend showed me this, and he's like, dude, it's a free plugin, and that blew my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. People make music plugins for free? I didn't know free music plugins are a thing. So anyway, so I added just a little bit on sound gain. So what I did is I initially created, or made it more width in the Ozone Imager, stereoized it. So basically I made it into stereo. So I turned it into a stereo sound. And then I use this just to make the side a little bit louder. Not a ton, I think, 3.1 decibels, but just to add a little more side stuff. So that's why it sounds a bit more like full, especially in the mix. Then use like a nice saturator here. Did some EQing. You can see right here, did some EQing as well. And then boosted a little bit in utility. And then sidechain again. Actually, I think I use this more as a compressor, right? Yeah, I think this is more just a compressor, actually. Then I have this. And especially with the wideness, it fits really well in the mix. So now, when I go back to the second part of the first drop, again, your mind's not used to this part. Again, I want to kind of throw someone off guard listening to this for the first time. Now that they're used to this concept, add other ones. Hi-hat, burnabout. Now I'm also going to call and response here. And then, as we get into third part of the first drop, of course, need some bally funk vocals. Now, there's a lot of these, you can even make them on your own, but the main kind of pattern is boom cha cha to boom cha cha. So you can hear it here. And there's different variations of that pattern, but it's kind of like, yeah, boom cha cha, basically. And there's different, different ways you can vary, like boom cha cha boom cha cha, boom. Like, different ways you can, approach this, right? Of course, I'm just showing you one example of one Brazilian song I've made. I think at this point, probably over 20 or 30 different Brazilian songs. So this is just my newest one at the time of this video that I've made. So I have this now, right? Pretty straightforward. Using EQ to cut out the low end, because I don't want any low end from this. Added a light reverb, because I feel like this, versus this, just a little extra reverb, not too bad. I also parallel processed it, and did some EQing just on the reverb part of the chain, just to, I don't know, make it fit in better, if I word like that. And then now we have this. Right? Then we go to this section now. Now, at this point now, as you can imagine, what I decided to do, sometimes I do have like a psh, and then I have a bridge and a whole verse 2. In this song, I decided to do a build just straight to the second drop. I was like, let's not waste any time here. Once the song kind of kicks in on that first drop, it has like that kind of hard-hitting, heavy bass Brazilian world music, even tribal style feel. So I was like, let me just jump right into the second drop. Not waste any time. I want to keep this energy going. So it jumps into this, and then we have this now. Right? So what I decided to do on this part is the first drop I felt was more of like a tribal, more Brazilian, I think, heavy style bass line. But then when doing some digging on Splice, again, sometimes I make my own bass lines in Serum. Sometimes I find a really good sample. To me, tomato, tomato. If I find a good sample, I'm using it, and this one had to be more of a tech house groove. This song, as you can see here, is a 124, so you could easily mix this with like deep house, tech house, that kind of range. It's not on the big room side of 128, 130. So I was like, what if I had like similar elements, almost the same elements, but added this kind of groove? Definitely more of like a tech house thing. This would be like sounds like almost like a John Summit style bass line almost, So now kind of transitions a little bit. Again, throws you a bit off guard, but still has the Brazilian elements, but now on the tech house side. Now for this particular part of the song, because it's a second drop, I did want to vary something too. Now one big thing I learned in capoeira, in case you've never done capoeira, it's a Brazilian martial art and dance, is you clap 3 times, a lot of times in singing and people doing capoeira. So you go like, right? So I have this here that I made. Actually, not really made, but, found a sample of. I have this. And then I kind of chopped it a little bit and made it that now I have the 3 claps in a row. So it goes. So as you can tell with the song, if I even just do this, I don't think I have any MIDI in here at all, actually. Do I? Is this non-MIDI? Do I have any MIDI on the builds? I guess if I count that as MIDI, but this is actually just a... So as you can see, there's nothing made in the Serum. And I want to stress that because I think when it comes to a lot of world music, and some might have maybe more synthesis or whatever, I think a lot of it is really intense samples, intense sample driven. A lot of it is like basically finding all these different puzzle pieces, cutting them up, kind of rearranging them, warping them, doing all this kind of stuff to make it all fit cohesively. So now I have this on the second part of the second drop. And if I'm with a bass line, like this section, like this kind of... I feel like that worked pretty well. Another thing you may notice is here, I have this kick. The reason why is I want this to work. All right? Here, though, completely different kick pattern. When I combined this one with this one, didn't really work, right? These work well together, but in this case, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to use a standard kick, add in that kind of tech housey bass, then add in other percussive elements if I want, right? So now we have this. And and then finish off here. Right, again, very cymbal driven, a lot of one-shots here and there, a little bit of a call and response that you're hearing. Then finish off with a nice little outro here, bringing back the main melody. And then last but not least, little like cinematic ending here as we finish off here. No, of course, I do want to stress, like I said a couple times in this video, every single Brazilian song is made a little different. Of course, there are some that are more maybe on the reggaeton side. We have like the boom, cha boom, da boom, more on the Valley Funk side. There are some, if you look at Alok, for example, or Felgic, who does more like the Brazilian bass, which is almost more on like the deep house side of the spectrum. So, of course, this video is not meant to be a one-size-fits-all, but more of a demonstration of an example of a Brazilian song. And I think the biggest thing I say to a lot of people when it comes to making Brazilian music, as I made a lot of Brazilian songs, and my main kind of strategies is, one, I like to have a lot of percussive elements, not just kick and bass, but like a lot of maybe like congas, a lot of just, even maraca, like any kind of percussive thing. And I almost look at the percussive patterns as the leads themselves a lot of times. Like if you think of this song, there's really not a melody lead in a sense. Like, yeah, you have that vocal sample in the beginning, but I don't really have any melody leads per se. It's more just very percussively based songs. That's the first thing. Second thing I'm going to do a lot, as I showed you, the burn and bow. I use the burn and bow a lot. It's kind of become one of my signature sounds. Even if, like I said, even if I'm not making a Brazilian song, I will still use the burn and bow in a lot of my songs. And I think when you're doing a Brazilian song, in my mind, you just got to include it. It's the burn and bow, right? I also love the sound of it. I love the sound of the burn and bow. Harder instrument than it looks to play, by the way. I did get a lesson when I was in Austin, Texas. Pretty difficult instrument. The hardest part is actually holding it. It's kind of weird to hold it and use like the coin. And anyway, yeah, the second thing I do, as I showed you, the burn and bow. And third, last but definitely not least, is vocal one-shots or vocal samples. Especially if you look at like groups like Barbatics, who did Baiana as like their biggest hit. A lot of, I've noticed, Brazilian productions use vocals, but as their own percussive instrument. So like as I showed you in this case, the one that I found on Splice, the boom, cha, cha, boom, cha, like they almost use their voice as a percussive element, and that's how they treat it. Rather than being like a vocal sample of them singing something, it's used like that. And I feel like when it comes to making a Brazilian song, especially having that true like Valley Funk or Brazilian funk style, you gotta have something with those kind of vocal chops used as a percussive instrument.